Now that we've completed the washing process, we need to start the water displacement process. So we need to take the rest of this water that's sitting inside these bird feathers and get it out of there. There's a couple of different ways we can do this. I want to mention that we do have a pro tip on Taxidermy Insider that covers this in depth. We're going to go over it again now. The system that we're going to use is going to be using a spin cycle on a washing machine, and that's going to spin the water out of the bird feathers. If you don't have access to a washing machine, you can wrap this in paper towels and squeegee the water out, or an old used towel works fine as well. So we're just going to put the bird in the washing machine, set it on spin cycle, and click start. The reason why we need to spin the bird or wrap the bird in paper towels is to remove all the excess water, because it's going to make the dry process a lot easier when it comes time to blow dry it with a blow dryer or a bird blowing machine. Now that we have the bird spun out in the washing machine, we're going to be putting it into our tumbler that's filled with corncob grit. That's going to help displace the rest of the water that's left in the feathers. If you don't have a tumbler, you could go to the blow drying process now at this time, and you could skip this step. But because we have a tumbler, we're going to use it. So we'll just set the bird in here, open it up slightly like this, and we'll put a small amount right inside of the bird, just enough to catch any little water that might be in there. We'll close it up. And we'll let this spin for probably 5 minutes. It depends on the dryness of your corncob grit. If your corncob grit is super dry, you're going to want to be checking it more frequently so it doesn't over dry. You don't want to completely dry the bird in the corncob grit, because that's going to ruin the feathers. You want to just dry it to about 3/4. If your corncob grit's a little moister, it might need to stay in a little bit longer than 5 minutes. So it's just something you have to learn by feel. All right, so we just took the bird out of the tumbler. It was in corncob grit for about 5 minutes. As you can see, it's about 3/4 dry. The down feathers are still a little damp yet. This is just how you want it to come out. You don't want to over dry it in there, otherwise the feathers might start to fray and not look very good. For the blow drying process of this, there's a couple of different methods that you can use. We're going to be using our Master Blaster bird blower. There's a couple of different bird blowers on the market. This is the one we use. It's got 2 engines in it to really power it up. If you don't have access to a bird blower, which I would highly recommend you purchase if you do any volume of birds at all, you can use a blow dryer. They work just as well. It just takes a little bit longer to do. But for the course, we're going to be using this Master Blaster. Now that we have the bird dried, I want to look at these wings, and you can see there's a little bit of corncob grit that are stuck in these primary feathers. That's very common when you tumble the bird to get this. That's why sometimes people don't want to tumble them, so they don't have to worry about this corncob grit being stuck in there. But it's easy to get out. We'll just take our fingers and run it right along the feather, and we'll just pull that corncob grit right out. You can lightly shake it on the table as well, and that will dislodge some of the corncob grit that might be in those primary feathers. Now that we have the bird pretty much de-corncob gritted, we want to apply a small amount of borax to the skin side of the bird. So we want to make sure that borax gets all over the inside of the skin, the head area, the neck, the wings, the legs, everywhere. And we're going to use powdered borax. Take a small handful, we'll put it right inside the bird, shake it around, and then what I like to do, I like to grab the bird by the feet, and we'll flip it upside down like this, and that's going to get that borax to run down the neck into the head area. And you can take your finger and start to kind of help some of that borax get down there. You can also do this step during the drying process when you're using your blower. That can be helpful to do too if you want to blow any excess borax off that might be in the feathers. But I think it's important if some of this borax actually does get on the feather side a little bit, just to help preserve the skin. You don't want too much of a buildup because that borax will start to dull the shine, especially on a wood duck. You also want to make sure that you don't have a big buildup of wet borax inside the neck, because that's going to make it hard to insert our artificial neck into it if there's a big gob of dried borax inside of it. So you just want a thin layer all over the skin. Flip it back this way, making sure we're covering all parts of the inside of the skin, get the inside of the wings. We can put a little bit more in here when we're doing the mounting process. You don't want a big buildup of borax in here because that could interfere with some of the caulking we'll be using. You won't necessarily get good adhesion, especially in the tail area. So now the bird has been completely boraxed on the inside. You can see there's a nice coating of it everywhere. Any bit that might have got onto the feathers, we can go ahead and blow off later on during the mounting process. Kind of brush off some of this excess borax that fell onto the table. And now we'll move on to form selection.